Right, exactly.
So
And there's certain tricks. I mean, there's dozens of tricks out there to get you to the place where you can do that. It's like if you get bad habits, then you've got to go through the whole process of getting rid of those bad
sure,
habits and
sure,
establishing new habits.
right.
But one of the things is you can make small progressive steps. And it's amazing. You know, it's like if you're a smoker and you stop smoking, everybody says how much they enjoy food and they can taste their food a lot more and their food's a lot more satisfying.
Interesting.
Well, it's the same thing with getting rid of processed foods.
Sure.
It's like you start to get rid of processed foods in your diet, and you actually can start tasting things more, and everything becomes more satisfying in its natural state.
That's interesting. You know, I just a thought popped into my head. I've always been a big enjoyer of Brussels sprouts, but my wife never enjoyed them at all. And recently, she said, "I'm going to give up sugar 6 days a week. No, no little, because she likes a little, you know, chocolate at nighttime or something like that." And all of a sudden, she started liking Brussels sprouts. So I'm interested.
Yeah,
Maybe that's the reason why. That's an interesting thought.
yeah.
Very cool.
It definitely have something to do with it.
Well, I'm happy you mentioned sleep too, Joe. I just wanted to touch on that real quick before we move on to the final thing we're going to talk about today, because it's so powerful. I have a baby, a relatively new baby in the house, and so it makes you appreciate the sleep you got before having a baby. When you're just like, oh my God, I would kill for like a solid night's sleep. You know, so
Yeah.
it's so important. So, Joe, we're here to talk about you getting ripped, everybody else using your secrets to get ripped. You've shared with us kind of the basics, how you just need to stay consistent with exercise, eat just a good, solid, healthy diet, stay consistent with that, throw in some intermittent fasting once a week. But you have something else you want to teach us. You want to teach us a particular breathing technique that's going to enhance everything. So why don't you share that with us?
Okay, so this breathing technique is actually comes from Ayurveda and is used. There's various levels of using this breathing technique, and what I'm going to share with you today is what I call level one. The advanced levels, you can get more benefits from them, but everybody can get benefits from this level one breathing technique, and it's the easiest thing to start out with. And in fact, there's some strength coaches like Dan John and Mark Twight who incorporate this into their programs.
Oh, perfect.
And I was really pleasantly surprised when I was reading what the training program was for Henry Cavill, the guy that played Superman in the
Right.
last movie, because he was trained by Mark Twight. And I was reading along what the training program was. And Mark Twight had him doing this technique in between each of his sets. So I'll teach you what this technique is. But before I do, what I'll say, the benefits, there's a lot of benefits to these techniques. There's benefits in performance and also motivation. There's a whole host of things. But the main thing is, for me, by doing these breathing techniques, this is a nasal breathing technique, it was, for the first time in my life, I had a self-regulating mechanism to my exercise intensity.
Interesting.
And it wasn't until I started doing this technique that I realized that the reason I always got burned out and bored or injured before was because I didn't have a self-regulating method that would stop me, that would help me tune in to what my body was needing on any particular workout. It's like your body, if you think about it, you go into some days, your body will feel like 100%. And you can work out at 100%. But if you go into the gym and your body's only at 85% and you try to work out at 100%, there can be some collateral damage there.
Right. Right.
So what I learned was, and so this is a technique I would suggest that people try. And in between each of your sets, breathe through your nose. It's as simple as that. Like for Mark Twight, when he was training Henry Cavill, he was telling him to, between sets of his exercises, he would take 8 to 10 deep inhalations and exhalations through his nose. And you wouldn't think that that would have such a profound effect on your recovery. And he was doing it mainly for recovery. But what actually happens is when we breathe shallow, quick and shallow, we'll stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight nervous system.
Right.
And when we do the opposite, when we're breathing through the nose, we'll stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is calming, recuperative, that sort of feeling. And so just bringing a little of that parasympathetic stimulation to your nervous system while you're exercising can really increase your ability to recover, both during exercise and afterwards. So it's important when you're doing that to breathe deeply, a full inhale and a full exhale, and just do it through your nose. And so ask me a question, Tyler.
Yeah, well, I'm just wondering if anybody heard me start breathing through my nose all deeply as soon as you started talking about it. Because that's exactly what I started doing. Well, no, that's fantastic. This is a really important point to point out. I have a book that recently came out, The 27 Body Transformation Habits, and one of them is learning to breathe deeply, because you connect to that parasympathetic nervous system. It takes you out of that stress, fight or flight zone and puts you kind of back into a more gentle Zen state. But I had never considered doing that specifically in between exercises as a part of my workout. I would use different breathing techniques during the exercises, like the Valsalva maneuver and so on and so forth, but never as a, like specifically between our workouts. So you do this between every set of your exercises? Is that what you do?
Well, that's what I recommend people to start out with. For me, actually, the reason I say this is because when I started out, I just did nasal breathing through my whole workout.
Sure.
That was what I read in a book, in an Ayurvedic book, that would be good to do. So I went and tried it out, and it sounded like it wouldn't work, but I was amazed. It said, breathe through your nose exclusively, and if it gets too hard to breathe through your nose, back off on your activity level until it becomes comfortable. Until it becomes comfortable to breathe through your nose again.
It's self-regulating, right?
It's self-regulating. So I tried it out on the first workout, and it also, this book said you might have to reduce your intensity or your weights or whatever. So I reduced my weights of maybe about 10% to 15%. And I got done with my workout, and I just I wondered, did I do it right? Because I don't feel exhausted. Right. It's like, did I get a good workout in? Because I don't feel totally exhausted like I usually feel. And I thought maybe I'd done something wrong, so I went back and read it again. And it said, oh yeah, that's what you do. You just breathe through your nose. So, and it also said that give yourself 2 to 6 weeks to get back to your previous performance levels.
Sure.
And I tried it, and it was actually the next day I woke up and I felt so good, I couldn't believe it. It's like I felt like I wanted to go back in the gym that day again because I've recovered so much faster. And I continued to do it, and it took me about 4 or 5 weeks before I was lifting the same amount of weight. But then I actually was able to build on that all the while breathing through my nose. And I even do my high-intensity interval sprints breathing through my nose. And it's just, what it does is it opens up, it develops lung capacity. It develops greater VO2 capacity.
Right.
And at the same time, you're breathing more deeply through your whole workout. And I think that, there's nothing that I have to confirm that scientifically. But my own experience and the people that I've taught this to, I've taught it to people who've used it in running and who use it in cycling and who use it in karate. And they're all reporting the same kind of benefits.
That's fantastic, Joe.
And
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The only other thing I want to add to that is there's a couple other advanced ways of doing that nasal breathing that I've incorporated. And I talk about that in my book, but just the simple technique of just what we just talked about will work wonders.
That's crazy, man. I'm going to have to try that out because I can see, you know, you have these MMA guys wearing these gas masks over their face that inhibit certain amount of air coming in so that they can build lung capacity. But I'm thinking in my head, you know, it's a lot harder for me to breathe through my nose and my mouth. That might be the same exact concept in terms of increasing your ability to take in and put out oxygen, but without having to add anything extra. All you do is close your mouth and breathe through your nose instead.
Yeah, I will give you one caveat, is that most people can't do this.
Yeah.
Because of their ego.
Right.
Not because of the physical structure of their nose,
sure.
But if you're used to pushing at a certain level and you have to back off, you're immediately going to think, oh, I'm not going to get the results that I want.
If I'm not 100%.
If I'm not 100%, if I'm not really pushing it. And that takes, for most people, that's a hurdle too high. But if you can, you know, if you can be easy enough with yourself and give yourself permission to experiment with this for, you know, 2 to 6 weeks, the outcome for me was I've been able to maintain an exercise habit and get down to low body fat levels that I never had all the rest of my life.
That's crazy. I'm giving this a shot. I'm committing to this nose breathing workout. It's the thing. I'm gonna give it a shot, Joe. So you guys should give it a shot too. I'll post a link to Joe's book. You guys can check out all the details and everything that Joe does there. Joe, I have one more final question before we take off. I ask everybody this question, and you're a successful entrepreneur. You're 62. You're lean and you're shredded, right? What's your secret to success, my man?
Oh, great question. The biggest thing in my life after 62 years was the biggest thing that has made the biggest difference is learning how to meditate 40 years ago. I learned how to meditate 40 years ago. I've been regular in meditation all those years, and it has enabled me to drop bad habits. It's like it takes down all the noise in your brain. It gives you a better quality of life and more creativity. Just all those things that you hear are so great about meditation. They actually are great. And that has been, I credit that with all of the success that I've had.
That's fantastic, Joe. Well, thank you so much for getting on the call today, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with the listeners.
You're welcome.